last week's
Mataji, it's not clear for me.
Enter.
I can't hear. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
I also can't hear.
You also not able to hear?
Mataji, it's not clear for me.
You can hear me now?
I can't hear. I'm so sorry.
Look, now?
Say little better now.
Chapter 1 is humility with determination guaranteed success. Can you hear? If not, maybe I'll just move out of the room.
I can hear for some time, then again it goes away.
It's a little on and off.
I'm not in my house actually, I'm in my temple. That's why. Okay, I'll just sit outside of the door. 1 second, give me a minute. How about now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
But now is okay. We will let you know if it's getting.
Okay, I think I'll just sit here. I was in the AV room, that's why. Because there's some kind of disturbance. Okay, I will kind of recap a couple of the first few chapters we did last month. The chapter 1 is humility with determination guarantees success. And the second one was, so there in first chapter, we were discussing how humility is the key which opens our door to spiritual advancement. Along with humility, we should also have determination. Humility doesn't mean that we are seeing ourselves as a doormat, but yet we understand our insignificance and reach out to Krishna, who's our Supreme Lord, who will give us the strength to continue to do our services and be on the path of devotional service. At the same time, we should also have the real determination to reach the goal. If the goal is not well defined, that which we then again speak in chapter 7, if the goal is not well defined, if you don't have it in focus, then you'll not be determined to achieve it. So we need to have the determination. We covered a small chapter about a small story of how the sparrow was very determined to retrieve the eggs which were stolen by the ocean. And then Garuda will come and then Garuda will try to save. Second chapter. Second chapter, one who is envious cannot advance. So in this second chapter, we were seeing how envy is a deterrent to our spiritual progress again. Envy means we are thinking that we are better than the other person. Matsarya means I'm better than you. So that's the basic, definition of the term Matsarya, which is envy. When we are having envy, it exiles us from Vaikuntha, entering the spiritual planets. Because in Vaikuntha, or the spiritual realm, it's an anti-envy mentality. People are they do feel like they need to please Krishna. There is that competitive spirit, but then they don't want to undermine another devotee's efforts to please the Lord. So everybody's focus is on Krishna needs to be pleased. So they encourage each other, but they do not put down anybody. And Srila Prabhupada also encountered envy, but how beautifully he deals with it. He speaks and satisfies some of these envious people by saying that I'm just trying to represent my spiritual master, and even if I'm sitting in the Vyasasana and then he's getting the Vyasa Puja done, and then he's like, I'm just a humble servant. So like that, he just, because of his humility, he just conquered the envious heart of the onlooker. And then again, we spoke about how envy amongst Vaishnavas is very, very one of it'll make us to commit uprise again, and then it will become like a stumbling block in our spiritual progress. We need to deal with our juniors by helping and encouraging them. With our peers, we need to discuss about the spiritual topics and serve with them. And amongst our seniors, we need to hear and take instructions. And this way we can, overcome envy. Third chapter, we discussed about loving our enemies more than ourselves. So unless we have this mentality of having, love, thinking about the other person, or having deep compassion for our neighbors and treating them like, the way we would treat ourselves. So all these are like the anti-material realm ideas. So this is this is how we need to cultivate as aspiring devotees. Compassion is the key. Unless we're able to feel the suffering of the fellow devotees or fellow souls, it's very, very hard to come out. And truly feeling for others, whether when they're para dukkha dukhi is one of the qualities of a devotee. That means if another person is like really suffering, we feel their suffering and try our best to elevate them, alleviate the suffering. At the same time, if they're joyous, if there's something good which happens, we're really wholeheartedly joyous for that, whatever good situation, good things which are happening. But then the material in the material realm, it's just the opposite. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj is like Mahashaya has written many beautiful Bengali poems in which he says it just feels the opposite. He's just trying to show how a conditioned soul feels. So unless we get this develop this attitude of truly feeling for others and truly having this compassion, it's difficult to progress. Again, gratitude will increase compassion. So we want to have compassion. So how do we get, how do we develop this quality of compassion? That's by having this quality of gratitude, feeling very grateful for everything that we have, what Krishna has given to us. When our heart is open, then we can also feel for the other person's suffering or happiness. So this is the way to progress. Chapter 3. Then we go into chapter 4, the language of selflessness, understanding Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And are we truly selfless, Maharaj writes, Swami Maharaj? And what is the language of selflessness, of how he said, like, just like Vasudeva Datta, right? He said, let all the sinful reactions of all the souls in this planet come to me. Let me suffer in the hellish planet perpetually, but let all these souls be able to come back to you, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this was his request. So this is the kind of selflessness a soul needs to, in the prayers of Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, we can see that. And that's what he says. This attracts the heart of Krishna. When we are having this quality of selflessness, it really attracts. And then it doesn't mean that I continue.
Mataji, we lost you and your voice is not very clear.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you, Mataji.
Yeah, you can hear. Oh, no, something happened, something happened, like I was like out of the Zoom and then again came back. So that's why I was wondering what happened. Okay, so now we are going to enter into, and then again, in chapter 4, we were discussing how we are just a caretaker in this environment. We are not the proprietors. But then the whole idea over here is like we are thinking we are the proprietor, and then we are trying to control everything. So by extending our control on either material things, people, circumstances, we are thinking we can enjoy. So the whole idea is we want to enjoy without Krishna. And how do we do that? By trying to control. And controlling by having this mentality of controlling everything, we are thinking that everything belongs to us. We are forgetting that we are just the caretaker of all these things, right? So Maharaj says that we are only caretakers of everything that we have. And when we die, we're going to leave everything behind, right? This thought, it was very much in his consciousness, and it just comes out in his writing over and over again. And many times Maharaj is like documented, he's written diaries in which he says, today is the last day of my life here. So what are the important things that I need to do? So in this kind of mentality, Maharaj was living every single day. So then it shows like, we are not attached to anything because we know that today might be our last day. So this is, and then one more beautiful point of chapter 4 is, why am I being bored? So if we are having attraction towards self-gratification things, or if our mind is wandering, and if we are feeling very agitated and bored or lazy, so this is kind of an indication that we are not correctly situated. We are not using our time and in devotional service practices because we're not finding taste in it. So that's the reason why the mind is giving up, an alternative as to just going and enjoying. So this is something, again, we can consider, catch ourselves and rectify correctly at the right time. But then we need to, again, have this knowledge. When we have knowledge, we can, catch when we make the mistake and rectify, repent for it and then rectify later on. Then this is chapter 5. We're going to start for the next 3 chapters in today's session. Chapter 5, 6, and 7. The 5th chapter is when we wound our spiritual master. That means we are hurting our spiritual master. Refusal to surrender blocks the parampara. Now we must sever, that all these subtle attachments and weeds that we're having, we need to really come out of them. Unless we, recognize and then take out these subtle anarthas which are there in our consciousness, Krishna will not be pleased. We cannot bribe Krishna. We can put on a show and then try to impress others and whatever, just to the temple or whatever, the way what we are doing, my services and things like that. But that by we're doing all these things, Krishna is not pleased. Krishna, we can't bribe him, right? Krishna knows what is our internal real intention and what's our heart, what is our real disposition. Krishna knows. So we need to understand that by only taking out our anarthas, by putting the efforts to, and rectifying our consciousness inside, that's the way to please Krishna. And for doing that alone we cannot do. We have to become a parampara. So we need to surrender and allow mercy of our parampara to flow to us. So to meet with that, we have to, and then when we are actually put in difficulties, what the reason why Krishna puts us into difficulty is because he wants to invoke intense devotion by our desire to see changes in this very difficult environment, despite the forces of negativity that surrounds us. This is what Krishna wants us to see. That means Maharaj is saying, yes, it might be very difficult, but even in that situation, situation, if we're going to have real intense devotion in our heart, and if we continue to maintain that kind of a consciousness and deepen our, devotion towards him, so Krishna will be very pleased. Like when Krishna disappears from the rasa dance, right? The gopis love, love for Krishna intensified. So love and separation is something which our Gaudiya philosophy, it kind of, what do you say, it exalts the position of love and separation. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also in Kabira, the last 12 years, he was not like smiling and laughing with the devotees, and that was not the kind of enjoyment that he was having, but he was crying in separation from the Lord. So this love and separation is the highest kind of ecstasy. And so when that happens, what's happening? The devotion is getting intensified. So sometimes, like in our lives also, there will be some difficult situations, and Krishna is watching us. What is it that we are doing? Are we intensifying our devotion, or are we slackening? Are we just falling prey? Are we just falling prey to the situation and just giving up and becoming very complacent? So this is a test for us. If we can continue to have intense devotion in even such situations, then what happens is Krishna will surely protect us, and our parampara's mercy will come through. So the mind begins to engage in fear associated with intoxication of sense gratification. So this is the way the mind will do, tempting us with intoxication of sense gratification. But we should not fall prey to it. This is the kind of real violence, which is so sorry, the door. Violence occurs when we involve ourselves in any activity which constitutes a distraction to the devotional process. So each time we are minimizing our chanting of our rounds, or we avoid reading scriptures, or we ignore the chance to preach, or we skip classes, we are wounding Srila Prabhupada, we are wounding our parampara by not surrendering to them. So this is the process which they have laid down and given to us. If we are really sincere and if we apply to it, then we're allowing that mercy of a parampara to come through. So then again, Maharaj says that a preacher should have some strategy. We are also like fighting our own battle in the Kurukshetra. Okay, so first is we need to have the real purity. When there is purity, it touches the hearts of whoever we come in contact with, and the greatest preaching happens by our own examples. It's not by what we speak. It's not what we are speaking in the class, or we are thinking we're sitting on the dais and then we are giving classes. But that's not the way preaching happens. Preaching happens in your everyday activity. After you finish the class, what you do, by that, you can understand. The other people can understand the purity, or but this that other devotees evaluate, and then evaluate our position, and that's how real preaching happens. And then Maharaj says demons attack us by two ways. First one, they weaken by, tempting us with sense gratification. And then second one is they frustrate one to such an extent that, the person loses all enthusiasm to stay involved in any spiritual welfare in the community of Vaishnavas. So two things. So the demons are like, the Maya will tempt us with sense gratification. Second is the person will just lose all the enthusiasm and walk away from the, group Sangha of Vaishnavas. So this is very, very very bad. So we need to understand that each time we are tempted to sense gratification, we need to say no to it. We should have the determination. And again, this determination will come when we associate with strong devotees association. That's the only way which, that's the fence. That is what's going to protect us. Then we cannot continue without stimulation. So we need to again, feel stimulated. In bhakti, if we are feeling very alive and very blissful, why will we go down? Why will we walk out of the devotees association? Why will we fall down and scramble down to a sense gratification? So we need to start feeling that bliss that we will feel again when we are really sincere and applying. Then, the reciprocation from Krishna will keep stimulating us, right? Otherwise, this feeling of voidness which is present, if that voidness is present, then we will try to fill it up with sense gratification. So this is like the cycle which happens. So becoming aware of it, it's very good. So every time we feel void, every time we feel lazy or fall down to sense gratification, we need to think, oh, there is a void and I'm trying to fill it up with this. So why is that void coming? We need to ask ourselves again. Maharaj speaks a lot about self-introspection. We need to keep introspecting our desires and what's going on inside, because our anarthas are something which we are aware of, and we need to again pray, like how beautifully we're doing in the morning classes. We need to pray for Krishna to reveal it to us so we can weed out these anarthas. Spiritual versus material weaponry. Know that if we lack sufficient knowledge of the enemy's field of activity, then we are incomplete. Incomplete. We have to understand both the positive and the negative action, that is pravritti and nivritti. So unless we know what is positive and unless we avoid what is negative, it is very difficult to keep progressing, right? So Krishna, and then this is such a beautiful sentence. He says, Krishna has no favorites and Maya has no favorites either. That means, Krishna is always ready to give mercy to anybody, but somebody who renders service to him, he considers him very dear, and then he protects him even more, right? So devotees are much more favored by Krishna than non-devotees. And Maya also has got no, favorites. This is her realm. This is her old, kingdom, this material world. So, everybody is going to be having all those three kleshas. And then these kleshas will keep us down. And the same kind of problems everybody has to face. But Krishna has the ability to give that protection. So we are in Maya, or so we need to choose where we want to go, and then continue to put faith in Krishna and then be on the right side. And then sometimes we have done a lot of good pious deeds, and because of which we have some nice bank account of these spiritual sukritis. And then because of that sukriti, what happens? Even if we are deviating for a long time, we can just, coast along in our, devotional service for quite some time and just coasting around and going. But then when all the spiritual credits or sukriti gets depleted, then the fall down will happen. So this is something which is very important, which we can actually remember. So we need to keep replenishing and recharging ourselves to this culture of devotion. Very, very important. So that, our spiritual security is not like, we're just banking on whatever we've done in the past and just keep gliding along. That's not going to happen. At one point, it's going to get over. So we need to keep on recharging. How do we recharge? By performing, what do you say? Tivra Bhakti. Tivra Bhakti means intense devotional service. Unless we have this desire to be like, really achieve the goal, unless we have that, that determination, it's very hard. People say, okay, take it easy, be kind to yourself. And then, yes, we can be kind, but then how long will we be kind? That fire of, yes, this is the gift that Srila Prabhupada has given to us. And then we need to, attain the fullness of this gift, which our spiritual master Parampara has handed over to us. That kind of feeling, that gratitude, if we feel, right, then definitely we'll be determined on this path. But then when we are not feeling that determination, when we're not feeling that gratitude, when we don't want to taste the fullness of the gift that we have been received, then we'll think like, let's just coast along. That's okay, that's okay. Now, if not today, tomorrow we'll do it. Tomorrow we'll do it. And the tomorrow never comes. So we need to really be determined. Like, Maharaj's words are like, wake up, wake up. How long will you, keep coasting? Just now, Gopal Krishna Maharaj's Vyas Puja also. And devotee was saying, Maharaj, the devotee asked Maharaj, how many rounds? Oh, the Maharaj asked him, how many rounds are you doing? And then this devotee is like, 8 rounds, Maharaj. And Maharaj is like, do 16 from tomorrow. And then this person is like, oh, it's very difficult, Maharaj. I have so many work that this. And the Maharaj is like, you're just wasting a human form of life. So look at that. The consciousness of all these elevated pure devotees is that we are wasting our material life, material time, human form of life. So unless we have that, fire burning that we want to do this, we want to really chant, we want to devotional service to please Krishna, not for anything else. If that is our motivation, then definitely that, Krishna will help us. So we need to get it right. If we are being very complacent and being like, it's okay, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And this life will just get over. Yeah.
Take you in the second.
Class. Yeah. Okay. Then, so, and then Srila Prabhupada is going to ask, what did you do with my gift, Maharaj? And then, you're just going to say, oh, and what service did you do for me? If Prabhupada asks, what's going to be our reply for this, right? So obstacles are there. It's not like there will not be any obstacles. The obstacles are there. They're designed to be part of our field of activities. They're just going to test us. That it'll help us to, we should have this intention to overcome these obstacles, and Krishna will give us the ability to overcome. So they're just meant to test us and keep going. And I like, just like in a video game, the more rounds you play, there'll be more obstacles. It'll become more challenging. So we have to, again, Tivra Bhakti, equip ourselves at becoming more stronger and stronger. If you don't, Maya will just, make us go out. So this is there. And just like, and then again, when we're thinking about like a material game or like a material exam, what happens? We're thinking that just by preparing well, by depending on my ability, I can conquer the test. I can conquer these tests and all those things. That's not how it is in material life. In spiritual life, it's just the opposite of material. The more humble we get, the the advancement, the more advanced a devotee is. So just like in the case of Maharaj Amrish, so the Ras Muni was like so upset. Amrish Maharaj was like, he was ordering correctly, he was following the right path only. What happened? That the Ras Muni was, unreasonably angry with him. But Maharaj Amrish was so much fixed in service. It was due to his proper devotion, dedication, and attentiveness. So because of which he was not shaken. And since he had that humble mood, what happens? Darshan Chakra comes to save Amrish Maharaj. So it was not like he was not even defend himself just by taking that humble position. To being in that service mode, what happens? Krishna will come. Krishna will, help us. So we should allow the mercy to come through. That is the section. And then the next one is ambiguity is Maya. So sometimes, this is very much prevalent, wherein this kind of an attitude where, we think like, sometimes I have my vision, my idea of what is right, what's wrong, and you have your vision and your opinion about what's right and what's wrong. And we all feel like, yes, we all are entitled to have our own opinions. But then Maharaj says, it's not like our own opinions are like, so great. We have to surrender to what the scripture says. So unless we are following the scriptures and what Krishna is saying, unless that is, the right, that is our golden standard. If we are not following that, then what happens? We're just coming down to Maya, right? Surrender opens the door to love. And when we are surrendering to the scriptures, to Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, when we are having that right thing, that kind of a disposition, then we'll be following in the correct path. But if we are having our own different ideas, like, Bahushaka, Anantas, that means if our intelligence is many branched and we're not having one pointed focus about what has to be done by following the scriptures, it is very difficult again, right? So this is what needs to be done. And Maharaj very nicely said, love brings more love. The devotion brings more devotion, just like violence brings more violence. So the more we are, being pure in our heart, the more we are following devotion through following the scriptures, Guru and Shastra, then, we'll get more strength to continue to do that. Understanding that Krishna consciousness is not a rational process, it's far beyond rationality. We need to strive really hard to be selfless and humble and not claiming proprietorship. This we already discussed. It's all about, how selfless we are, how much compassion we can show, how much humility we develop. So these questions we need to ask. Unless we are able to ask such questions, it's very difficult to, understand how we are progressing. So, and then one more beautiful point that he says is all this, the war manifests mainly through the battles within our own minds. Our minds is what causes a lot of, what do you say, the entire war happens in our mind, is what he's trying to say here. The greatest patterns of conditioning is within our minds. Why? Because our gross bodies keep dying every lifetime. We are taking different bodies, but our subtle body is continuing to pass through all different lifetimes, and all this our subtle body contains our mind, intelligence, and false ego. The mind contains all these different desires from many lifetimes, right? But then very wonderful point that is when we really what do you say, accept wholeheartedly Krishna consciousness, we are chanting our rounds, we are following devotion service. What happens? These desires which are there in the mind, right? In the dream, we will just experience them and just get done with it. This is Krishna's mercy. This is how he reciprocates. Those which are there as prarabdha karma and karma, everything gets washed away, and we are, doing devotional service. But these, some of the desires which are there in the seed form, that also gets bound by Krishna consciousness. Karma yoga and Jnana yoga, both of them, they also help us. But it is only bhakti which actually burns the very seed, the root of our sinful propensities. Everything goes away with the help of bhakti. So bhakti is so strong. Very important. And then how do we even understand what should we do? We should just follow our mahajans. That's why we have great personalities in the scriptures. How did they deal with the situation? There's a big problem. How did they deal with it? When we see their lives scrutinizing, our saints also, our entire acharyas, our guru parampara, we should follow in their footsteps. The lecture of instruction also says we follow in the footsteps of Rajvasis, then only we can get entrance into Rajdham. Otherwise, it's not possible, right? So we should come. We should get our, what do you say? We should elevate our consciousness and not keep giving reasons that, oh, I am just a neophyte. It's okay. I've done only 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I still have a long time. Who knows how long we have? And then it's nice to think that, yes, we are like really new, so that enthusiasm is there, that humility is there. But then we should not use that as a means of becoming complacent. So that is not something which we need to do. Mercy is always present. Dependence is very awkward without having faith. We need to have faith and then depend on Krishna. Then it'll work. So without having faith, there's no point of just saying, I'll depend on Krishna and say, you're depending on what? Krishna is going to reciprocate with the faith that you have, right? You really have faith and you depend on it? Yes, it works out. Because everything in devotee's life is orchestrated by Krishna. And then any difficulty or something which a devotee goes through is sanctioned by Krishna. And either it's definitely sanctioned by Krishna, and there's difficulty, maybe there's an offense which is being aparadh, which is being done by the devotee. So there is a difficult phase that person is going through. So we should be very cautious of aparadh. Then devotional. Then Krishna will help us doing our devotional service. Of course, there will be tests, but if Krishna has made that test, like Saint Sanatan Goswami's case, he gets this wet itches when he's driving across this Jharkhand forest because he takes a bath over there, dips in a pond which is infested with some horrible infection. And then and then after some time he comes to Jagannath Puri. He doesn't want to, he feels very embarrassed. Mahaprabhu is like embracing him. But then, and Mahaprabhu says, it's just like, a mother embracing, cleaning the small child. So that's how I feel towards you. And at one point, when Mahaprabhu embraces all his disease, everything gets vanished, like, just like that. So then he realizes this was a test that Mahaprabhu was putting him. Why? There was utter dependence on the Lord. And then the Lord reciprocated by everything just going. So this is how it is. When we have faith, Krishna reciprocates. Anti-material strategies. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Shibram bhavati dharmatma, sasvacha shantim nigachati, kanteya pratijani nanu takta vinashyati. He quickly becomes righteous, that he has lasting peace, O son of Kunti. Declare it only that my devotee never perishes. Krishna promises to save us. And his promise is not like, there won't be any struggle. It will be there. We have to deal with the modes of nature. But he is going to preserve our bhakti. Whatever we have, he will, preserve it. And he'll make it easier. We will get association of elevated devotees. We'll get association of amazing devotee sangha, access to scriptures, access to classes. This is the way Krishna helps. Again, we need to have faith in this process. Then, and yes, one of the best ways is when we distribute the love that Srila Prabhupada is giving to us. When we are distributing this unalloyed love that Srila Prabhupada is giving to us, right? What happens? There is a cleansing of our own hearts. Okay, so this is very beautiful. So just like how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was cleaning the Gulicha margin during the Gulicha margin, how he was picking up all these subtle dust, it's just like that. And as the meditative process, one is the gross material, gross fall downs we can kind of avoid, but even subtle ones also we need to do. Just like how the subtle dust, how he kept it so clean. When that heart is clean from both the gross and the subtle one, the dust, then only Krishna. Then only there is bhakti, where there is, we move to the position of nishta. In that nishta position, right, all these difficulties that we were facing before, right, that just gets cleared off. And then it's so much more easy, because even those, what do you say, the problems which are present in the seed form, right, the reactions of our past karmas, which is present in the seed form, which could have fructified, that also gets burned when we reach the nishta platform, which is a steady devotional practice. And then some of those subtle ourselves are like fault finding. Instead of fault finding, what we can do is love finding. That's very sweet, like how Maharaj says. Love finding in the sense, like, even if somebody is finding, is being showing, acting like our enemies, we can still be kind to them. We can extend love from our heart to that person. Of course, it requires a lot of, deepening, like purity in the consciousness to do that. But it's nice to know how a pure devotee, like his own Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, she explains what surrender is. So we are having a peek into his consciousness. We are very, very fortunate. So we can see this is how a pure devotee does. So we should try to say, not imitate, but then try to walk in his footsteps and slowly, slowly understand this is where we need to get to, right? And then how do you avoid duplicity? Duplicity. Sometimes people make mistakes, right? But then again, when we are also having these kind of what do you say, people who are below us, not below us, people who we are training, or like those who are who we are mentoring, and they might have some mistakes. We need to just be very, what do you say, encouraging them and being really honest. By doing that, we just encourage a culture of being very honest and open. So this will just make them to also be very non-duplicitous. It's very, very interesting how nicely he says that. And then ISKCON comes from the spiritual world. Maharaj says it's like ISKCON is not just a movement over here. Then Prabhupada also said it. There is an ISKCON in the spiritual world. Exactly what Maharaj says over here. ISKCON is not just an ordinary movement. All these scriptures that we are having access to, either the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, all of these wonderful scriptures, all these arrangements in the spiritual world, and these contain the recipes and formula for our spiritual success. Scriptures have okay. Then, yeah. And then all these pure devotees, or Nityasiddha bhaktas who have come, they embody a lot of everlasting devotion in them. If they were really acting the way they are supposed to be, right, we would just think that these pure devotees are like madmen, because their devotion is so much. So what did they do? They kind of take, calm themselves down, and then they just tone themselves down in order to demonstrate personally what it is supposed, how we are supposed to do, how we are supposed to think and act. This is what pure devotees do. And it is these pure devotees who are opening these scriptures, they're opening the doorway to, they're opening this doorway to have access to these spiritual works, all these spiritual scriptures. These Nityasiddha devotees, they embody ever increasing devotion in their hearts. If our devotion does not increase, we will also become casualties. So that's this one theme which is recurring over and over again, of how we need to deepen our devotion. Right? Maya is very, very powerful. So if we think we're just going to go slowly, at one point, like we are just like kind of walking, Maya is running behind us. So definitely she'll catch us before, right? Because she's running and we are walking. So we should also start running. The more we are running towards the Lord, and under His protection, under the mercy of Guru and Krishna, they will keep protecting us. That means basically, as the years are going, we should become more deepen in our bhakti. We should become more sincere. We should beg and cry that we're not able to chant purely. That should be our mood. So again, deepening of the bhakti. That's what Maharaj mentions over here. Right? 1 second. Yeah. Yes. And yes, as we make as we make proper connections, we will find that all these impediments can just be washed away. Lord is always there, and He's waking up, waiting to pour down His mercy. But are we ready to become His puppets? So this is a question that we need to ask. And lightening the burden of the spiritual master. So the spiritual master has come, he's given us his gifts, but what are we doing for him? So just like how Prabhupada is there, Maharaj gives this very visual example. If Srila Prabhupada is there with a suitcase full of books to distribute, will you just say, and then he needs to walk up the stairs, will you just allow him to do? Will you also take some of the books, take his suitcase and allow Prabhupada to lighten his burden? So what is it that we are doing for our spiritual masters? We need to lighten their burden by having this humble service mode and serving the way they want. So like this, we will stop wounding our spiritual masters, and we will be able to prepare ourselves to go back to the spiritual world. And we should do that today. Maharaj says, that's just so amazing. And we need to, again, it's all about having the right priorities. If we have our, energy flows where attention goes. If we are giving the correct attention to our priority, as devotion is number one, if we are having that kind of priority, and if we fix that properly, then definitely our attention will go towards our spiritual practices. Chapter 6, dedicate this life to the Lord. Finding true love, that's one of the subsections. It's so beautiful where here Maharaj is saying the Lord and his helpers are there. They've come here to, give everything to us. But we need to open our hearts to this culture of true devotion which they are giving. We can please both the Lord and his helpers. That means the spiritual masters and gurus and other devotees who are coming when we are receiving that love. It's very, very easy to do it, but then again, we should use our free will and say yes to the gifts that they are giving. The mercy is always present, but we need to access it. When we will be able to access it when we open our hearts wholeheartedly. If we accept it, bhakti is very interesting and very blissful. But then if we are doing our rounds anything very grudgingly, right, then it becomes very hard. Why? Because we don't even know what's the end result. But if we are always envisioning what is going to be the end result, when we will be with Krishna, right? If that is the way we envision, we understand why we are doing what we are doing, then it's not like Niyamagraha, one of the stages in Anartha Nivriti, but we're just following the rules for the heck of it. We don't understand why we are doing what we are doing. So that's just another Anartha. So we need to, again, familiarize with ourselves, with the scriptures, and understand the rules and regulations properly. That will help us. Material time versus transcendental time. Sometimes, what happens is like we have certain ideas. Krishna has to do certain, these things according to our material calculations. But then Krishna works in the transcendental plane, transcendental time frame, right? And then it'll unfold according to his plan and his timings. So we just need to accept it and then allow his timing and his will to prevail. Temptations will always be there to trouble us. But then again, well, we should not, stumble down to the temptations because things are not happening according to our material time. We need to have sincerity in devotion. Then things will happen according to Krishna's transcendental time. This is how beautifully explains. Therefore, we find ourselves sometimes in situations in which we appear to be suffering. And all these complications will become very difficult to bear. But then at the end of time, just imagine this entire lifetime is also just like a blip in in eternity. If you think this lifetime is just like a small blip. In this small blip called our lifetime, we are going through some periods of suffering. So just imagine how insignificant it is when we think about eternality, right? And then we laugh at it when we've made through it and back to the spiritual world. How beautifully Maharaj says. So we should just have patience. That's also there, right? Enthusiasm, patience, and confidence in Krishna will help us. So this should be our attitude. We should always be in this begging spirit. Always. A begging spirit means making ourselves accessible to divine mercy, blessings, and intervention. Again, beg means basically pray to the Lord with all our hearts, intensely, and cry to Him. Cry like Japatakamara says, cry that you cannot cry. And if you cannot do that, cry that you cannot cry. He just goes on like 7 times, like amazing. So that's how we should be crying and begging. That's when, the mercy will pour through. And Gorgavan Maharaj is some beautiful, he says, I've opened this crying school. And we cry, and when we really want, that's when we receive, right? So that should be our attitude. And then when the mind stops interfering, we are able to feed the intelligence. So it's the mind which is the biggest block. So, but when we make our mind our friend, what happens? Then mind will stop interfering and giving different sense gratification, ideas or distraction. All of that will stop. Then what happens? Then we can easily feed our intelligence with the right scriptures and right thoughts, and then this will indeed, help us stimulate our soul. Our soul is Sachidananda. It already has all the knowledge which it's supposed to know. Whatever we need to know, it's already there. We're not accessing it. Why? Because we are completely identifying with the so-called material body. That's the reason why we're not living our life as spirit souls. In this temporary material environment, we are identifying ourselves very conveniently that we are this material body. It doesn't mean that we are very negligent of our health and taking care of our body, but at the same time, we need to understand what is the reality. We are the spirit soul. We are Sachidananda, but we are not accessing and understanding that. Who's the real friend? Real friend are ones who really remind us what is the real essential thing, which is what is devotional service. And then they also make us aware that there are certain distractions, and real friends don't feed each other poison, right? Real friends don't come together to just do fault finding or doing just gossiping, but real friends really help to understand where is our anartha, and then help us to say go deep. A person who's actually who glorifies us is supposed to be considered our enemy, and one who criticizes us is our friend. Why? Because it might hurt our false ego in the beginning, but then one who's helping to find those faults is helping us to identify our anarthas, right? So those who remind us that there's intense work of anartha nivritti, or clearing of unwanted things in our heart, these are our real friends. So it's so beautiful, right? So we can understand who are our real friends in this life. Detachment from past activities is a positive sign that our consciousness has shifted. So again, we can ask a question: are we still attached to certain things that we were doing when we first started Krishna consciousness? Are we still having enjoyment in them, or some distaste has come in these kind of material activities? If some distaste has appeared, that shows that there is some advancement and progress that has been done. And this next session is like blow your mind away, because it's called spiritualizing sleep. Where it says 1/3 of our life is spent in sleep. So we should spiritualize that also. We need to treat some scriptures and sleep, so that when we are sleeping also, there is some kind yeah, sorry, I think it just went out and came again. Okay, the soul, and then he says, like some very special pure devotees. What happens to these very elevated souls? When they sleep, right? The soul, along with the body, they just pierce and go. I mean, not pierce, like they just travel to other universes, and they are doing services over there. This mind, right? So these elevated souls, even when they're sleeping, they're doing service in some other universe. So this is how they do. But then, ordinary conditioned souls, what we can do is like spiritualize it, at least read scriptures and sleep, so that in our dream there will be some kind of spiritualization which can happen. This is what it says. Make sure that relations that constantly inspire you to come closer to the Lord, and expect miracles. The next section, which is expect miracles. Why? Because this process is so dynamic, it's so beautiful. So when we are doing devotion service, Krishna reciprocates. There are sometimes miracles do happen, but then again, there are certain realms which we can access only if our consciousness is compatible with that spiritual realm. Okay, so that will happen if our consciousness gets totally elevated. And some of the spiritual realms are so pure, we can enter them only through emanation. That means only by the assistance of those pure souls, by their saying, begging the Lord and allowing us to enter, can we enter. So this is how it really works. So that is why, they say that following the footsteps of those perfected souls, by following and begging and praying to them, we also get access to such wonderful spiritual reality. And the spiritual miracles, the spiritual reality is a reality, and such miracles are there. I mean, so many times we can see in our own lives that things was like, it's like it defies all, normal conventions. And then some things just worked out. How? So this was Krishna's way of telling that he's there, the way he reciprocates. I'm sure every one of you who have joined here, there is something which is special, which has happened in your life, that shows that Krishna is present in your life. So these kind of miracles has happened in everyone's life, which is giving us the impetus to continue our, our spiritual life. So we need to remember them and understand. It's not like we just expect Krishna to keep performing miracles and then he's done like a miracle maker and then he doesn't follow our idea. He's a supreme autocrat. Whatever he wants, he will do on his transcendental time, like how we discussed. But then we need to understand he is the one who rules the entire material energy, spiritual energy, everything is under Krishna. So if he wants, he can change anything. That is the power. So we need to have that kind of a trust and belief in Krishna. Exactly. Just so that you should understand these scriptures are living, they're very alive. They're Krishna himself, the Gita, the words of Gita, which is words of Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Krishna's incarnation of Krishna. When we approach these scriptures, that they are alive and this kind of a mood, then we can see the reciprocation which we can get from these, these texts when we are reading. So it's just about like how we are approaching. That's the way we're going to get the reciprocation. Like how we are, Krishna says, right? I reciprocate according to this, and so that's how it happens. So when we are synergy having the right mindset towards reading these scriptures, that they are alive, it's Krishna himself, then that kind of same reciprocation that we have. That ends the 6th chapter, and then I think the last 5 minutes maybe I'll just wrap up. Chapter 7, which is the last one. Okay? This is losing oneself to gain oneself. This is very akin to the prayer that we read every morning, which is we need to die so that we can live our eternal life, right? That means our false ego, which is keeping us accustomed, present over here, only if that false ego dies or we give up our identification of I and mine, when that dies, when we give up that, then we will get entrance to the spiritual realm. So this whole chapter deals with losing oneself to gain oneself. We need to let go of this I and mine. Then we can gain our real eternal spiritual identity. So there will be a lot of, constitutional conflicts. There will be so much of conflicts in our life also, but then still we need to be steady. We need to still continue in ISKCON, following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. If we are keeping and being really sincere to the words and instructions of Prabhupada, right, then even despite all these institutional conflicts, anything that happens, right, we will succeed in the end. That much confidence we should have as devotees. Similarly, many devotees collapsed, Maharaj is writing, spiritually, when they find themselves unprepared to bear the increased pressure on the subtle level. There's so much of, as Kali Yuga progresses, there's a lot of problems which is going to keep on increasing. And, devotees will become natural casualties if devotees are not very cautious. So again, we should become very cautious. So just all understanding these words through the vision of this pure devotee, it'll fortify our intelligence to become really sharp, right? So that we'll become more serious. So this is the way I'm understanding. So I pray you are also seeing these texts, even though it's very elevated, you're also able to absorb all this in that kind of mentality. Mundane morality is not enough. So we are thinking. Sometimes we are thinking that this Krishna consciousness is just like being really good citizens, following everything right. This kind of morality that this concept that we have, this is exactly what it is. This is not what it is. Krishna consciousness is beyond. It's beyond the mundane, morality that we have. This conception is completely different. Vaishnava Acharyas address as false ego is like a separate person. Sometimes, we just think false ego is part of our subtle body, which is true. But sometimes some of our Vaishnava Acharyas, they've also said false ego is like a separate person. It's like an enemy within who knows our greatest weakness, and then it'll keep on, constantly reinforcing these weaknesses again and again. How do we come out? We need to again take deeper shelter of Srila Prabhupada. of our spiritual masters, of the Shastras. Only by doing that we can get over it. And why many spirituals, this is again, Maharaj said, it's because of false ego. False ego makes us very selfish. If we want to transcend these subtle obstacles, we need to realize our true nature as eternal and blissful spiritual beings. Unless we come to this platform, and unless this kind of self-purification happens, it's very, very difficult to advance. So we should think, how can we become a better servant? How can I serve better? So if this is the attitude, then it'll be very good. Confusion arises due to ambiguity of not experiencing. So lack of these transcendental experiences result in fear, manipulation, and exploitation. So as I was saying, at different stages, certain experiences are meant to be experienced at different stages in our spiritual life, right? So if we are not experiencing them, then we are feeling a lot of avoid. And then again, we'll feel like, oh, it's not working. There's a lot of confusion. And then we feel like, giving it up. There's fear, and we think we'll try to manipulate others or to exploit. These kind of silly things, we will try to do. So again, when we are sincere, those experiences which are meant for that particular stage or adhikar we are at, right, that will open to us. This will keep us enthused. It will keep us keep moving towards the goal. So surrender, we need to surrender deeply. So losing oneself to gain oneself. That false ego proprietorship, we need to give it away. And we should not fall into sense gratification and free ourselves from these desires of enjoying without Krishna. The whole idea of we've come here to enjoy separately from Krishna. Our soul itself is such an ananda. We want to experience bliss, right? It's just part of it. I mean, it's part of our soul. It's our constitutional nature is to enjoy, but then we want to enjoy without Krishna. That's the problem. So when we are using our senses to serve the Lord, then there's immense happiness, that bliss which we cannot just get by doing sense gratification and enjoying alone without Him. And how do we continue year by year? Maharaj, this is where he says, again, keep asking yourself questions, introspect, keep asking, where was I 20 years ago? Where was I 10 years ago, like this? And see how those who are progressing very well, see, examine their behavior. How are they advancing very steadily? What is it that they are doing right? So like that, we can take inspiration and advance along with those devotees. Some people on this planet will surely become God conscious in this lifetime. He's saying so straight, right? Maharaj, in the time when he was leaving, also he said he even named some people. Like they've gone back, he said, to the spiritual. He had access, that kind of his spiritual consciousness was so high, so pure, and he knew everything, all the problems. He was there on his bed suffering from cancer in Gitanagri, but then in the end, he knew, he was just communicating. He knew exactly what was happening in the whole of ISKCON, the problems, everything he was able to tell. He was just there, but then he knew why, because these kind of information, the Paramatma in the heart will reveal to pure devotees. And Maharaj says the next section, today I died, like how I was expressing in his spiritual journals, right? He always says that today is my last day. So like that, he was very focused. What is the right thing that I need to be doing today? And being really serious in Prabhupada's movement. So if that is the attitude that we can have, then it'll keep us very focused. Otherwise, we'll just keep procrastinating. Next. What is my status? Next is the next topic is, what is my status? So this is a very beautiful section. I think with this I'll end. Many people, when people say nice things to us, we become very excited. But when some people ignore us and they criticize us and challenge us, we become sad, depressed, and very angry, right? So if we are becoming sad, depressed, and all, that means we have a lot of false ego to deal with. If you're really serving genuinely, then we'll feel very happy whether or not we receive any recognition. We're just serving to please Krishna. So this is just such an amazing point. So we can see how much of false ego is still left with us. And, and if somebody is even angry with us or is insulting us, do we think we should retaliate, or we should look at those person's fault and say, oh, look, you also have this fault? Or do we think that we are better than you? In a descending way, do we do that? So we should just examine closely our unconsciousness. So like this, we can understand we have a lot of false ego to work with, and then take deeper shelter of sadhu sangha, scriptures, holy names, the whole process of the devotional service itself. So this way, if we can do, right, then we can come out of this false ego, which is that last barrier which holds, it is present between us and surrendering to Krishna. Again, I want to, last thing, what I want to end with is, remember, humility is the biggest powerful key which can actually enable and hasten our surrender process to Krishna. So the more humble we become, it's very easy to let go of this ego. It's not easy, but then it becomes easier if we become more humble. Again, how does humility come? When we associate with those who have humility, right? The more we read our Guru Paramparas, their lifestyles, their autobiographies, right? Then slowly we'll also get this kind of little bit of humility will rub on to us also. So this is our hope. So with this, I'd like to end. Thank you so much for your patient hearing. And all glories to His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, who's written this beautiful, beautiful book, Surrender, the Key to Eternal Life. Hare Krishna devotees, so if you have any questions or comments, I think it's already late. Maybe just 1 minute, with 1 minute or 2 minutes we'll take, and then we can end the call.
Very nice lecture, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Mataji, we can end the call then. Hare Krishna. I can't hear you if you're speaking, Radha Govinda Mataji.
Thank you so much, Taruni Radha. I have feedback, but I'm going to